Financial mutants, we got one for you. Top 10 mind-blowing money stats.
I am so excited about this one because this stuff is like bread and butter. These are some things that will probably blow your mind. Or maybe if you're a financial mutant, it won't blow your mind, but you will say to yourself, holy cow, is that true? Is that accurate? And so we want to share them with you and then share a little bit of Money Guy flavor, a little bit of our take on what should you know about these stats and how can they be useful for you?
So I feel like the company formerly known as Twitter, I always love the Money Guy echo that we get from content. So this is everybody who's got a channel out there, who's got a platform. This is stuff. Get your notepad out or your tablet and let's start writing down these things because I can't wait to see how many Money Guy echoes we get off of this content.
I love it. I love it. Let's jump right into the first one, Brian. This is one that we talk about all the time. So we think about mind-blowing money stats. This is one that we hear and it makes us sad every time we hear it, and yet it keeps not changing. 57% of Americans can't come up with $1,000 in an emergency. This is where if you were sitting in a room of someone speaking, you say, hey, look to the person to your left, look to the person to your right. One of those two folks can't come up with $1,000. That is not a great place to be from a financial standpoint.
By the way, you don't only have to look to the right.
Well, either you or that person.
Here's the thing I think is interesting. Let's give it a little positive. This is you pretty much can set your clock to 60% of Americans can come up with $1,000. 57, we have had a slight improvement historically. I'm thinking we're probably going closer to 60%. This also ties in, and we didn't turn this in a slide. It's been making the rounds on socials the last few days, but it's something I just wanted to point out. 51% of Americans. Only 51% of Americans have more savings than they do credit card debt.
That's awful. That's someone who doesn't understand how money works, how debt works.
Lots of paycheck to paycheck folks out there in the American economy.
And so what do you take away from this? What's the thing that you can glean to say, okay, how do I use this stat? Well, the emergency fund, the money that you keep in savings, the money, is the barrier that exists between you and the unknowns in your life. So if you do not have that, if you do not have that critical part that keeps your life out of the ditch, you're probably doing it wrong. And it's so important, Brian. We make it one of the very first things we think people should focus on.
Yeah, and that's why if you go to moneyguy.com/resources, in the financial order of operations, number one is deductibles covered. And I'm going to go more specific. Your highest deductible needs to be covered because this is what's going to keep you from taking your financial life running it into the ditch and then never recovering. If you look at how many bankruptcies are caused by medical problems or other big things that you're just not planning for, you'll never get out of the financial gates of building wealth and success unless you can at least cover those speed bumps that might come your way right in the beginning of the process.
All right, Brian, well, you just said 51% of Americans, or only 51% of Americans have more in savings than they have in credit card debt. So that means that potentially we have a credit card problem in this country. That leads to our second mind-blowing money stat that over 1/3 of Americans carry a credit card balance month to month. 1 out of 3 says, you know what, I'm not going to pay this off every monthly. I'm going to buy something today, and rather than pay for it at the end of the month, I'm going to carry that balance over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, credit cards are one of those things where it really is a binary decision. It's a 0 or 1 in the fact that if you can pay it off every month, credit card use is okay. But as soon as you start running into credit card debt, it really is a no-way situation because that is blowing up your financial life and you're using compounding interest actually against you. You're turning a powerful force for the good into something that is quickly, I don't even have to say slow, destroying your life in a very fast process. And we even had some stats that took a little bit more on this. But if you look at this, credit card debt now is over $1 trillion.
I mean, so it's not. This is not a small problem. $1 trillion of credit card debt is a big, significant problem that still exists in this country.
And listen, this is. I think there's some deniability on this because people are just embarrassed about it. 21% of people don't know if they even have credit card debt. Come on.
21% of people don't want to admit that they have credit card debt.
That's exactly right. 43% don't know the interest rate they're being charged. I'm actually surprised that number is that low. I bet a lot of people don't know the interest rate they're paying. By the way, it's probably over 20%. 69% don't understand how compounding interest works. So, I mean, these are the problems and why people are lured into these situations where, so I just tell you, back to the binary decision. If you're not paying your credit card off every month, you just might not be a credit card type person, and just stay the heck away from it.
And so what's the takeaway here? You have to know your numbers. You have to understand, how does this work? What is my income coming in? What is my outflow going out? And I need to learn how to budget, because if I'm racking up credit card debt, that means that I am living beyond my means. I am robbing from my future self to pay for myself today. And you're not doing it right, because compound interest, it can be your favorite ally or it can be your fiercest adversary. And you want to make sure that you don't let it start working against you.
Do you smell that, Bo? I think I smell a case study coming on.
A case study coming on.
Because I think we love showing the numbers so you can actually see. Because this is, if you're thinking about the incremental decision of act like the average American where I'm running and using credit cards the wrong way, or I'm thinking like a financial mutant and I'm actually, instead of spending and running this debt and using, compounding interest against me, let's see what that difference looks like.
So think about this. Right now, the average credit card balance in the United States is just under $6,000. It's $5,910. Well, if you were to make the minimum payment on that, which comes out to about 2% of the outstanding balance, you'd be paying $118 per month to try to get that debt paid off. And if you did not incur any additional debt, you'd have it paid off right around 9.5 years.
That's so sad.
Well, over that 9.5 year period, that $5,900 of debt actually cost you $7,661 in interest alone. So you have literally thrown money away. That is compound interest working against you. Well, what happens if you were to flip the script? What happens if you were to do it the right way? And instead, what if you took that $118 every month that you were paying the minimum payment on your credit card, and you instead invested it for 9.5 years, starting at age 25, assuming a 10% annualized rate of return? Well, in the next 9.5 years, from 25 to just before your 35th birthday, that money will have turned into $22,000. So instead of paying off a $6,000 debt, now you have $22,000 saved up. But that's only part of the story,
yeah,
right?
Because think about this. There's also, that's just the first 10 years that we've had this going on. What happens the rest of the time if that money continues to work?
That's right. If you just, without saving another dollar, if you just let that $22,000 continue to grow all the way till retirement, all the way out till age 65, and if we assume a 10% rate of return, that one decision not to incur that credit card debt, not have to make that $118 payment, could actually lead to almost $500,000 in retirement, $466,000 in retirement. It matters. Let compound interest work for you, not against you.
And don't fall into the mental trap that people think just because you're getting a 2% cash reward on your credit card use.
That's a great point.
I mean, because we love credit card rewards, don't get us wrong. But if that 2% is not going to overcome the plus 20% interest rate that credit cards carry for them. So like I said, if you're carrying any balance on a credit card debt, get out of it, because it's credit card use is okay. Credit card debt, no way. Live by that.
All right, Brian, but credit cards aren't the only problem. There's another mind-blowing stat that has to do with debt that we want you to know about. Did you know that 17% of trade-ins for new vehicles have negative equity, meaning someone is trading in a vehicle that they owe more than the vehicle is worth, and they're just rolling it in. So on average, these folks trading this in owe $5,341 of negative equity that are rolling into a new loan. If you're doing that, you're never going to get on sound financial footing.
So you asked me, did I realize, and here's what that stat did surprise me, but then I think about all the people that live around me and stuff, and you just can't help but notice in your neighborhood, if you live in a large neighborhood, that you start recognizing who drives what cars. And in this stat, it's almost 1 in 5 people are having negative equity. And I'm like, yeah, this is all the people that I see that seem like they're flipping cars every 2 to 3 years. I'm like, whoa, that neighbor already has a new car. And,
How they do that?
I thought they just bought a new car 18 months ago. So there's the only way this happens is either you have limitless pots of money, but if you are flipping cars every few years, more than likely, you're potentially building up some negative equity, or your negative equity, because equity is a positive
I'm about
word.
to say, you're just digging
building
the hole
up
deeper.
debt is what you're doing, and it's rolling into, and you're never actually owning the cars that you're driving.
And so why does this happen specifically with automobiles? It's because automobiles depreciate so quickly. Cars on average lose 9% of their value the moment that you drive it off the lot, and they actually can lose up to 60% of their value on average in the first 5 years. So if you are buying new, trading in, all you are doing is accumulating all of that depreciation. It is going to be very, very difficult for you to get out of that hole if you continue making that poor financial decision.
And what's really compounding this problem is the fact that the average car loan now is 69 months.
It's crazy.
If you take into combination fast depreciation plus spreading out how fast you pay this down, you're going to be underwater on this thing really quick. And what's crazy to me is I look at luxury cars, and not to go on a luxury car rant, but it is one of those things. No, I'm not. But it is one of those things. I was watching a YouTube video because you can get a lot of education, and this person was talking about like Range Rovers depreciate like 85% over 6 years. BMW and Audis were like 70% over that same period. Lexus, because once again, Acura and Lexus people are living their best life in that luxury, quasi-luxury thing. They kept like 50%. And the reason was a lot of these vehicles have horrible maintenance costs, meaning that once you get outside the manufacturer's warranty, these repairs aren't like a few $100 to change brake pads or the tires and stuff like that. I'm talking about like engines locking up. I'm talking about transmissions going out. So pay attention to that stuff, that you need to think about cars not only in how it's going to make you feel or what you perceive you will feel by driving this, but actually what is this vehicle going to do for you on reliability, on your finances. A lot of these things are really interconnected.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why we came up with the whole 23-8 idea, because if you can follow 23-8, there's a really good chance you're going to prevent yourself from being in the situation to where you are underwater on your automobile, to where you are one of these people rolling in the negative equity. So if you can follow that through, you're likely going to set yourself up on sound financial footing. If you want to know more about that, we have an entire car buying checklist that you can go check out, moneyguide.com/resource. You can actually check that out to make sure that when you do purchase your automobile, you're doing it the right way.
And remember, 23.8 is also for entry-level vehicles. It's not for luxury.
That's
luxury
right.
vehicles, you need to pay same as cash. And then it's also one of those things where I always want to remind people, it's much better to actually be rich than just to look
So
rich.
true.
So that's why I want you to have reliable transportation, because that's very important, especially if it's needed to get you to your job and other things that are going to create the foundation to your wealth. But it is not something that you use 23.8 to bridge a bad decision.
I love it. All right, Brian, let's talk about this fourth mind-blowing money stat. So not only do we have a problem with spending and consumption, the debt that we are accruing, but there's another problem that exists right now in America, that the average savings rate in America right now, according to the Federal Reserve, is 4.1%.
Yeah, I mean, visually, I think we need to let people actually see what this looks like, because we had a little quasi-celebration. I felt like, when the pandemic hit, you saw when everybody was kind of locked down, that there was savings rates popped up, and now
And I thought it was a good thing.
Yeah,
I thought,
you were thinking maybe this has come some internal reflection. People, a little nervous about things, so they're going to change the way to. But no, it was all literally because they couldn't go out and spend the money.
Literally, they couldn't spend the money.
So it was almost like putting in restrictions. So they had all this money built up, and then as soon as you're let loose, all the revenge spending occurred. And you can see we've actually come to a lower place. If you visually are looking at this, you can see that savings rates historically, if you went back to the it looks like this goes all the way back to 2013. We are consistently, that line's pretty flat between 6 to 8% savings rates. But then we peaked up during the pandemic, where we blew past 30%, which was kind of incredible. But then we have now gone
to make
below.
up for lost time now.
Yeah, the revenge spending has pushed us to a point where now we are consistently below 5% on saving and investing, which is really, if you think about, a sixth of what we think is where you need to build financial independence through.
That's right. We want you saving 25% of your gross income for the future. Now, if you're someone young, you're someone who's just starting out in your career, it may be hard to hit that 25% number, but at least start somewhere. And wherever you start, try to work towards 25%. Try to work towards 25%. And the reason that we say that is because with a 25% savings rate, if you start that at age 25 and you do that over your entire career, mathematically, when you think about the dollars you have saved and assuming a very conservative 6% rate of return on those savings, when you go to retire, it's likely you'd be able to replace 166% of your pre-retirement income. So either you could retire and take a huge pay raise, or what more likely will happen is you will have more options sooner in life to live life on your terms the way that you want to live it. That's what 25% can do for you. Unfortunately, we live in a world right now where the average savings rate is only 4%. We got a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, I would encourage, because I know anybody who's listening on the podcast side, you're not seeing the actual graph that Bo has put up on the screen right now, which is a comparison of the intersection between your age and your savings rates. And I want to echo something Bo just shared. I know in your 20s, if you look at all the things that are pulling on your back pocket, it is hard to save 25%. That's more of an aspirational goal. But if you look at the cross section here, you look at the 20s and the 25-year-olds on these two things, lots of green opportunity, even with a 10% savings rate, a 15% savings rate, definitely with a 20% savings rate. It's only when you get older and you get into your 40s, 50s, and beyond that you see anybody who didn't actually make a disciplined attempt at trying to invest and grow for the future that you really got yourself into trouble. So the more time you can give yourself to let your army of dollar bills do the hard work, the more success you'll have. You just need to become very disciplined, very deliberate, that you want your money to work as hard as you do.
I love it. All right, Brian, let's talk about this fifth mind-blowing money stuff. Now, I got to be honest.
This one makes me sad.
I knew a lot of these, right? A lot of these are kind of old hat for me. We've been doing this for a long time.
Yep.
This one, I got to say, was new. So this even blew my mind because I did not recognize this. But did you know 39% of undergraduate student loan borrowers don't graduate with a degree? Like, we know we have a student loan issue in this country, but did you recognize 40%, almost 4 out of 10, start the journey, take out loans, incur debt, and don't actually get the degree? That's a double whammy of unfortunateness.
Yeah, this is one, I mean, everybody in the content team, I was even talking to my mom this morning. You know, she's a retired school teacher, and I love education, but I feel like the state of education now is a little in disrepair. And the fact that I feel like there ought to be a truth in education disclosure for anybody and everybody, because we have these 18, 19-year-old, when you're barely, they don't even let you, you don't get to drink, you don't get to
rent a car,
you don't get to get a hotel room, but yet we're going to let people go and take down 6 figures worth of debt.
It's crazy.
On something that, you know, is sold to you in a different way. It bothers me. And what makes it even worse is to know, as you said, 4 out of 10 people who take on student loan debt, there's a good chance they might not even get the actual degree, because that's what you make this investment in yourself, because there's no better investment than an investment in yourself if you can increase your shovel, your income, and your ability to that lifetime of success. But if you're actually sold that dream, but then you get the debt, but not actually the tool that's going to increase your income, you've actually just compounded your trouble and your financial woes. And that troubles me greatly that we've gotten to this place. And then it makes me even sadder for even a lot of the people who graduate with a college degree. When you find out that only 27% of Americans actually work in their field of study, meaning they got the degree, but then they only 27%, so a quarter of them work in their field of study, that's sad. That means that there's still, once again, there is a disconnect from what the dream and what is being sold versus what is actually connecting and being, you know, in the real world. We've gone beyond the brochure of what's actually happening in reality. We need to really have a conversation about how do we fix education.
And what I think is so interesting is when you look at the flip side of that, you know, we do this annual survey of our Money Guy clients, of all the folks who we have said, hey, they've attained a certain level of success. They're the opposite of this. 73% of our clients said, hey, I actually work in a field of study. So it seems like maybe this is just correlation, not causation, but if you can make the decision to get a degree in the field of study inside the work you want to do, there's a good chance that financial success might follow that. And yet, when they interviewed response to the survey, 44% of folks, almost half, said, I regret my field of study.
Yeah.
Man, if I could go back, I wouldn't have done that degree, or maybe I wouldn't have gotten that, or maybe I would have studied something else. How frustrating that one of the most expensive things they buy until they buy a home is their education, and 1 out of 2 folks say, man, I wish I would have done that.
Now, I want to make sure, because we're optimists. I want to make sure we give a spoonful of sugar here to help people figure out what's the takeaway. How do we actually pay this forward so people can not make this mistake? The first thing, treat student loan debt, even though it's a noble thing to invest in yourself, debt is dangerous. So if you're using it and you're not scared to death, like chainsaw scared, then you're using it wrong. And I think that's the thing. You go beyond the noble cause that's been sold out there, and it is. Education's great. I attribute education for getting me to where we are, but just make sure that that tool of debt, you need to be very fearful and scared if you're using it.
And then do a little due diligence. Be diligent about the major that you choose. You know, it's no surprise. Universities have added thousands of majors over the years, but perhaps the majors that the university have added are not majors on which jobs are waiting for the graduates when they get there. So make sure you do some ROI calculation. Okay, do I need to pursue this degree? And if I pursue this degree, what institution do I need to pursue it in? And do I even need to go to a 4-year school? Do I even need to send my kids to a 4-year school? Because it may not actually be necessary for the vocation that you want to go. And just like most things, if you're willing to do a little bit of extra research on the front end, you can set yourself up to have significantly more success on the back end.
Yeah, and then I think it's important to understand the student loan rules and the fact that first, here's some basic benchmark guidance. If you can understand, there's nothing, I mean, I think there is a good portion of the population, you might need some debt to bridge on this cause, but keep it under control to where it's hopefully less than your first year out of college income. This will keep you, because, I mean, colleges have gotten where they're almost like country clubs. I mean, where housing can be expensive. I mean, I knew people in college that were using student loan money to buy cases of beer.
Pay for Greek dues.
Yeah, I mean, don't do that stuff. Be very scared when you're using this. And if you do have student loan debt, we even think that, especially with interest rates being where they are now, there's nothing wrong, with paying down some of those student loans, especially the ones that are over 6% if you're in your 20s, or over 5% if you're in your 30s, or if you're in your 40s and they're over 4%, get out of debt. I mean, you do not want this stuff hanging around forever. So be very serious about trying to wipe out that student loan debt.
And again, it's so interesting, Brian. We said that 44% of graduates regret their field of study. And I wonder if that goes right in line with our 6th mind-blowing money stat, that 77% of employees, again, this is a Gallup poll that was on, 77% of employees are not engaged at work. And I think what they say engaged is this is, I clock in, I clock out, but I'm not doing my best work. I'm not plugged in. I don't love it. I don't have passion for it. It's nothing more than a job. That's all it is.
I mean, I take this stuff. It hits my heart a little bit, because I wake up every morning. I feel like I have purpose. I come to work, but I sit in the content meeting and I see this stat that the team found, and I was like, Bo, I know you and I like being here. Does this mean that the rest of the team,
everybody show
is
hands,
kind of like not engaged? And then I don't know if in next year's employee review, if we're just going to be like, okay, are you engaged? Or do that anonymous, survey that's not really anonymous. So, but it's, it was one of those things where this made me sad, because I want you to wake up. I think a big part when you do studies on happiness and fulfillment, you feeling like every day when you wake up that you are actually making the world a little bit better and you have purpose with your job. This is going to help. So to find out that close to 80% of the people out there are not engaged and not waking up with that type of excitement, we need to work on that. We need to figure out a path.
And let's think about like the logic exercise through this. So workers who aren't engaged at work likely aren't going to be passionate, likely aren't going to be motivated, likely aren't going to try to do work excellently. Well, if workers are not doing work excellently, then it's probably also going to be difficult to move up the ladder and advance your career and be able to improve your station in life. So it becomes this vicious cycle. Well, I hate work because I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not going anywhere because I hate work. If you can figure out how to flip that, if you can figure out how to find passion and pleasure and do work well, you might be amazed that, okay, this thing that I'm doing from 9 to 5 every day, 5 days a week, or whatever your hours are, maybe it doesn't have to be miserable. Maybe it doesn't have to be something I hate. Maybe it can be something like, man, I actually enjoy this. I enjoy the journey. I enjoy what I get to do, and I get to do it incredibly well.
Yeah, I want to kind of be a good mentor, because not only do we help with your finances, but we help with mindset and the fact that I see so many midlife crises and other things, because people get into their 40s and they realize, oh my gosh, I've got kids, I got responsibilities, and I feel like I'm stuck. And if you're waking up every morning not having purpose and feeling disconnected from your job, that's a problem. So I want you, and I know this is very aspirational, but you can be deliberate with this process. Go beyond job and actually start thinking career. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about put on your 3D glasses when you're like starting entrepreneur things or making any big life changes, there's nothing wrong right now if you wake up and you don't have purpose and you actually are chewing on your fingernails every Sunday because you don't want to go to work on Monday. I want you to start planning right now. What's my 2 to 3 year plan? And part of that plan is that 3D glasses where, hey, do the dream. I'm waking up every morning. I'm super excited. What is my skills and my talents intersect with this will not even feel like a job anymore, to the down to earth plan. That's the second D. And then the do plan, is that you make the jump and it doesn't work out. I'm just telling you, plan, and you can actually improve this. We have proof of this, Bo. Yep. Look at our firm. We have a lot. If you go look at our planners here at Abound Wealth that work with us, we have a lot of career changers, mm-hmm. meaning that a lot of them realize one day, I don't like what I'm doing, or they had some financial success pretty early and they're like, you know what? I want to do something different. I want to feel purposeful every morning. You do not have to be stuck if you're unhappy.
I love it. What a great line. I would say you do not have to be stuck if you're unhappy. You can be an agent for change in your life. And if you make those hard decisions, if you make the hard decisions now, there's a good chance that you will be able to make easier decisions later. That's a beautiful thing. All right, Brian, let's talk about this 7th mind-blowing money stat. Now, this is tried and true, right? This is at our core. We know this. We talk about this all the time. 80% of millionaires are first generation. And we've been saying this forever, Brian, and yet it still is mind-blowing, and I think that people still don't necessarily believe it.
I feel like almost I need to pull up my bag of troll bait, and I'll shake it out, put it on the plate, push it out there a little bit, and because this stat, I always amazes me. We get a lot of hate for this one, and I'm like, guys, why are y'all fighting this? I mean, because this is actually... Man, this is exciting. If you come from humble beginnings just like we have, when I see stats like this, I'm like, there's a chance. I have an opportunity. If I can just find out what I'm good, what I do better than the rest of the world, how do I lean into some of these life experiences to be part of that 80%? Now, look, there is another side that I always really draw attention to. If you come from means, and you like, hey, my parents are millionaires. And then you're like, well, you try not to be the other part of this where the second generation blows it 70% of the time. Third generation, by the time you get to the grandkids, 90% of the time they've blown the wealth. This thing is a self-cleansing cycle. I want you to be on the positive side of it, but it is important. And by the way, don't take our word for it. But there's lots of research on how many millionaires come from first generation that their family, the people above them were not millionaires before them.
It's mind-blowing how consistent the numbers are. Whether you're taking the millionaire next door, the next millionaire next door, Ramsey Solutions, even our Money Guy Wealth Survey. Look at this. Back in 1892, 84% of millionaires first generation. 1996, 80%. 2019, 79%. 2023, 74%. It is wildly consistent that cycle that you just described does exist. The first generation builds it, second and third generation, spend it down. So I think there's some responsibility that exists, both for the generation that maybe does come from the humble beginnings, as well as the generation that's had some success, the ones that are passing it on. There is something to learn. There's a takeaway for both of those segments.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, if you don't come from money, that's okay. You got an opportunity. Let's make it every minute count, because be very purposeful. And then, by the way, if you have children and you've done well, you're a financial mutant, make sure you put some scarcity in that life so that you don't screw those kids up, so that they can actually build upon what you've created versus running through that cleanse cycle.
And then the last one is, if you are the child of that successful parent, don't screw it up. Don't squander it. Don't think that you have this amazing opportunity and you just waste it. Carry that on. Be part of the 20% that does pass it on and pass it on and pass it on. That's a beautiful thing. But the reason I think it doesn't happen, Brian, is because a lot of Americans don't get it. They don't recognize the value in making wise financial decisions and the value in making hard decisions early on. And that leads to our 8th mind-blowing money stat. Retiring Americans right now, according to Synchrony Bank, those that are entering into retirement have only saved, on average, about $221,000.
Yeah, this is the graduation gift for the YOLO crowd, is that you find out very quickly when you only live once, that unfortunately, most likely that once is going to be a ripe old age, and you better plan accordingly.
Yep.
And a lot of us procrastinate. We know that the 3 ingredients of wealth creation is really, discipline, turning that discipline into money, that money getting invested, and then give it enough time so it can grow and be nurtured, and just your money can actually work harder than you can. But the problem is nobody ever did the component of the discipline that turned into money, and then they wake up one day with no time left and they go, what do I do? And that's exactly what this stat says. If we have retiring Americans have only saved $221,000, Bo, that doesn't sound like that's enough army of dollars to generate that much income in retirement.
Yeah, if you think about it, just on like a 4% safe withdrawal rate, that's going to generate a little over $8,800 a year, or about $740 a month before taxes. And so, okay, yeah, maybe you have your 740, and then if you're older right now and you're closer, you're going to have maybe some Social Security payments that come in. But if you've not been living that lifestyle, living up to retirement, and perhaps you've been spending 100% of what you make, and you've been making a good income, and all of a sudden you retire and you have to drop your lifestyle down, that's not going to set you up, I think, for the type of retirement that you want. And here's what's really frustrating. This is retiring Americans. The younger generations, Brian, aren't doing a whole lot better. 28% of non-retired people, so folks that are still working, still accumulating, don't have any retirement savings. They haven't even started the journey yet. Well, it's difficult. Like, it's simple, but it's hard. And you have to make difficult decisions now so that your future self doesn't have to make as difficult decisions. But I think a lot of people are missing that, and they're not willing to make that hard choice.
Yeah, the big takeaway, I think a lot of people will just say, my situation's tough. There's not enough money, and I know times are tough. I don't want to dispute that. But I think I thought it was interesting, just in the last month or so, there was a big stat that came out about positions or jobs that, careers that created millionaires. And it was like engineers, which, of course, big shocker, they're super analytical, they're disciplined, they make it happen. Accountants, CPAs and stuff were high, number 2 on the list. And then right around 3 or 4 was teachers. Oh. And we all know teachers don't make a lot of money.
Don't make a ton of money.
So it's so how are they one of the most successful professions to actually create 7-figure status? And we work with a lot of educators ourselves, and it is one of those things where you don't have to make a ton of money to be successful. You just have to be very deliberate that you're going to be disciplined. Remember, first ingredient. That discipline turns into money that gets invested and works just as hard, if not harder than you can, with your back, your brain, and your hands. And then you give it enough time to let it build upon itself.
And the earlier you figured out, the easier it becomes. Brian, we were talking about this in show prep. You remember, like, when you first went off to college, you had those friends, and freshman year, like, oh, I'm finally free. I'm going to go party and have a good time, and I'm not going to worry so much about classes. And because they didn't make the good decisions their freshman year, they carried that tail with them into sophomore, junior, senior year, and they had to buckle down. And they had to make some really hard decisions later on in their career. Saving for retirement is no different. If you are someone who squandered your 20s and squandered your 30s, you're going to have to make up for lost time in your 40s and 50s if you want to move towards retirement. But if you are a young person, don't waste it, because if you can start early, if you can just get on the path and let your dollars start working for you, you'll be amazed at what they can do when you give them enough time. It's just a matter of starting somewhere. The best time to start saving for the future was yesterday. That means the second best time to start saving is right now today.
So I'll combine two of our favorite jock quotes. So
Okay.
always don't skip leg day. So
Yep.
you got to build that financial foundation. But you were talking about earlier, I remember you have a saying that's something like you do it easy. What was the saying you're talking about from college baseball?
Do it right, do it light, do it wrong, do it long.
So,
That's
see,
it.
That's exactly what
That's
we're
it.
talking about here for saving for retirement. And you know what? The easiest way to do it right is to make it automatic.
Yep.
If you can actually make your savings plan inevitable wealth building, meaning you set up on a monthly basis. I don't care what age you are. I don't care if it's $50 a month right now. Do something today, because you'll find out if you can let this thing get traction, that $50 is going to turn into $500 a month. Then it's going to turn into $1,000 a month. This thing builds upon itself, and then all the while it is just building, growing upon itself. I had a meeting last week with one of my clients that's pondering retirement. He has not been the most disciplined saver.
Right.
But I feel so proud that I've nudged him every chance I get. I was like, hey, you're doing that 401k. Why don't we go ahead and max it out this year?
love
Well,
it.
you've got the income. We can take a little bit. Hey, why don't you take that automatic account builder from $500 to $1,000? Now we take it up to $1,500. He's like, I don't know, but yeah, okay, let's try it out. And then he forgets it. And two years later,
love
he
it.
hadn't even thought about it. And now he has built a multiple seven-figure, not making a ton of money, but I feel so proud as a financial planner that I, from a behavioral standpoint, nudged him into doing this automatic saving that created an inevitable success for him. You too can do that. So just start somewhere, and I think that you're going to see it starts doing the work for you.
I love it. And Brian, the thing that I think is so important is the time that you put in. And I think society tells a different story. They want you to believe something else, that it doesn't require time. But we know time is often required when it comes to building wealth. And that's our 9th mind-blowing money stat, that most people don't actually become millionaires until age 49. It is not the folks on social media and TikTok and Instagram and fill in the blank of your social media telling you that you can be a 24-year-old millionaire tomorrow. I don't think that's the norm, and I don't know that that sets a realistic expectation.
Well, I want to give a little depth to this, because a lot of people will see one stat and they go, "How does that? I don't know if I believe that," because you can have stats that lie to you or mislead you, just like you have chart crumbs. Here's what I know. When you look at other influences of my financial life, the Millionaire Next Door, they have the whole Millionaire Next Door formula, which is you take your income times your age, and then you divide it by 10 to figure out how successful you've been on building wealth off of your income. We all know that formula I just gave you is kind of worthless if you're under 40 years of age, because you haven't had enough time for that formula to keep up with where your income actually turns into assets that build. Well, then you take the Ramsey Solutions research. They found that 49-year-old stat is one thing, but that's also in the research. It takes them typically 28 years to build this seven-figure success. That aligns right with the Millionaire Next Door research. So there's an intersection that you quickly realize, no, wealth is a slow, deliberate, consistent process. You have to create this automatic account building behaviors that will create consistent results that lead to this inevitable wealth. And you don't want to get distracted by all the get-rich schemes, the things of the day that everybody feels like around you is getting rich off of. They don't. I'm just telling you, those are distractions. Don't let social media, don't let anybody who's telling you how much money they made off of doing this one thing. They're not telling you all the ways they lost. You need to go with the automatic processes using index funds and other things like that, where you have reliable, inevitable wealth building processes working for you.
And what's beautiful is when you do that, the numbers substantiate it. Why is that 28 years so valuable? Why do people hit millionaire status around age 49? It's because of our 10th mind-blowing money stat, that by the time that you retire, 92% of your portfolio, if you were a consistent saver starting out in your 20s, there's a good chance that 92% of the whole portfolio that you've built is actually growth, earnings, gains, investment returns. Not the money that you had to put in, it's your money working for you. If you can give it enough time, the picture is incredible.
I love this stat, but I think that it goes, and you guys love it because I can't say this word very good at all, but boiling point. It sounds a lot like bowling point, but it's boiling point. You know, we all know that water boils at about 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius, and then a lot of people, you know, if you think about this in the analogy of wealth building, and we have a slide for this. You watch a show like this, it gets you all hopped up and excited about building for the future. So you say, you know what, I'm going to listen to these guys. I'm going to start saving and investing $500 a month. Yep. And you just do it. You set it and forget it, and you come back to it 5 years in the future, and you look at your account and you go, man, okay, I see what these guys are talking about. Yeah, I've made some money. I'm up about 23%. But I know that still 77% of this account is what I put in this. So what are these turkeys talking about that 92% of my money is going to be the growth? You didn't give it enough time. That's why we always talk about the 3 ingredients of wealth creation, which is you obviously got to have discipline to put your money to work that creates money. That's the second ingredient. And then you got to give it enough time to grow. Well, you look at 10 years. Now we can see the same behavior. 10 years now, 41% is your growth. 20 years, 68%. Now we got breakaway. We have reached the boiling point. But you can see after year 5, no, you're like, I just don't see it. And then that's where when we talk about 92%, that's any money you put in while you were in your 20s. When you hit retirement, there's a good chance that 92% of that money that came from the savings from your 20s is almost all growth, which is incredible. Your money can work harder than you can.
So what's the takeaway here? The takeaway is get excited about what your dollars can do. You know, you hear us talk all the time about how $1, we even have these koozies, $1 can turn into $88 for a 20-year-old by the time that they get to retirement. Well, maybe you're not 20, maybe you're 25. Well, for a 25-year-old, $1 by 65 can still turn into $44. But guess what? If you let that money keep working, you still have 88 times power. Your timeline just pushes out of touch. For a 40-year-old, $1 can still turn into $7. So I would encourage you, if you've not done this exercise right now, go to moneyguy.com/resources and go download our wealth multiplier. And this will tell you how much can my money grow between now and the time that I retire? So if you have been saving, maybe you're that person in your late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, early 40s, take whatever you've saved up to this point and go multiply it times your wealth multiplier. That's what your dollars are already set on track to do. And then think about every dollar that I add to this just makes it more and more and more and more powerful. And you will likely be amazed one day when you get to retirement, you look back and say, holy cow, I was saving $500 a month. I've got this multi-million-dollar portfolio, and what I put into it was just a small little chunk. And I let my dollars do the heavy lifting for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have trouble recognizing the power of incremental decision making. If you can just be very purposeful with everything you do with your decision making and think long term. I know that's hard. Our human nature is that we are into instant gratification. It is so hard to think about 10 years, 20 years, even 30 years in the future, because why would you do that when you can get instant gratification? All the deferred gratification just doesn't feel as strong. So what you have to do is create systems that are going to make the good habits easy. That's your automatic wealth building. You got to make the hard bad habits. You got to make the bad habits that are working against you hard. And that's why if you can actually create those automatic plans that creates a forced scarcity, meaning money's just not sitting in your pocket or sitting in your bank account that you're swiping away on it and spending on things. Be very purposeful with every dollar that comes your way, because it will. It grows. You set it, forget it, and then you wake up one day and you go, wow, everything those guys talked about worked. The abundance cycle fulfilled. I learned, applied, and had this level of success. And that's what I'm hoping you will have, this level of success that you need a financial advisor. You'll consider working with us, take the relationship to the next level. Go check it out, moneyguy.com/resources. We'll love on you with all the free information you want so you can become the best version of yourself. Here's what I want you to know, and I want Bo wants this, Reby wants it, the rest of the content staff. We know There's a better way to do money. Money Guy team.